So, tears of blood.
Wow!
Right. That is the exact phrase that author Anil Akim uses to describe what is coming for traditional Indian IT companies.
It's intense.
It really is. Like,
Yeah.
we aren't talking about mild market corrections today. We're not talking about, temporary dips in quarterly earnings or cyclical downturns. We are talking about literal tears of blood
Yeah.
and the weapon causing it. It's the very artificial intelligence departments that these legacy tech companies helped build.
It is a brutal reality check, honestly. And the author, he does not pull any punches here.
No.
Anil Akavav is effectively sounding the alarm that the giants of the traditional IT sector are facing, total destruction, and not from a competitor in the traditional sense, but from a fundamental unwinding of the business model they've relied on for decades.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because whether you are a tech investor who's like staring at your portfolio right now, or maybe someone building a career in the IT industry, or just someone trying to parse through this massive AI boom we're seeing, this deep dive is a massive wake-up call. We are dissecting Akilav's incredibly provocative piece today. And the imagery used right out of the gate is just absolutely wild.
It really is.
We are talking about monsters and middlemen. Mm-hmm. So the source claims that AI departments, which used to just be these little subsets incubating inside these massive IT companies, have basically separated.
Yeah, they've broken off.
Exactly. And now that they are distinct entities, they've become Frankensteins to the IT sector.
What's fascinating here is that it's the classic Mary Shelley dynamic, right? The IT companies built the early data pipelines, they fostered the initial tech environments, they effectively pieced the creature together, but now the creation has spun out, it's evolved, and it's coming back to devour the creator's core business.
Right, and to illustrate how vulnerable these creators are, the author hits us with a really stark analogy. They claim American tech companies are like banks, and Indian IT companies are merely the telecallers working for them.
Yeah, telecallers.
But I have to push back on that framing just a little bit.
Okay, sure.
Because I get the argument about who owns the intellectual property, but let's be real. Banks crash without their infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
The telecallers in this scenario are the massive IT firms keeping the global lights on.
That's true, yeah.
They maintain the databases, they run the legacy systems, they secure the networks. Is the author maybe underestimating the sticky, entrenched nature of these global IT contracts? You can't just rip and replace global back-end systems overnight just because a new AI model dropped.
Well, you're highlighting the exact defense the legacy IT sector uses to comfort its shareholders.
Right. We're essential.
Exactly. We're sticky. And yes, those systems are incredibly sticky. But the author's point is that the stickiness is temporary if your underlying value proposition is easily automated.
Oh, see.
Why choose the telecaller and bank imagery? A bank holds the capital, creates the financial products, takes on the risk, and it owns the core value.
Yeah.
The telecaller just provides a service, communication, maintenance, support. The author is highlighting a massive gap in core innovation. American tech firms are creating the foundational AI models, the actual IP. The legacy IT firms are stuck in a purely service-oriented loop.
So it's like the difference between owning the toll road and inventing a teleporter.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Legacy IT built an incredible global toll road. And for 30 years, they've been charging by the hour to manage the traffic, fix the potholes, collect the tolls.
Right.
But generative AI isn't a better car. It's a teleporter.
Yes.
It makes the journey and the toll road itself increasingly irrelevant.
That is a phenomenal way to look at it, because if AI can generate the code, debug the systems, and manage the databases without requiring an army of human engineers billing by the hour, well, the telecaller is suddenly out of a job.
Wow.
The bank doesn't need to route calls through the call center anymore. The AI handles the customer, the transaction, and the backend simultaneously.
It just bypasses them.
Completely. The legacy IT model relies on headcount. The AI model relies on compute power. And compute power is scaling at a rate that headcount simply cannot match.
And we aren't just theorizing about this Frankenstein monster in the abstract, right? The damage is already showing up on the balance sheets.
It is.
The source points directly to the Q3 earnings, specifically using Accenture as the primary canary in the coal mine here.
Yeah, Accenture is a huge indicator.
The author describes Accenture's forward guidance as very poor, noting massive hits across the board. Top-line revenue, bottom-line profit, and EBITDA margins are all taking a beating.
The core engine of the business is stalling. And what's crucial here is looking at how the company is trying to manage the optics of that stall.
Right, because the source points out a very specific mathematical detail. Accenture actually managed a 20 basis point expansion in its operating margin during this period.
Which is tiny.
Exactly. Now, on paper, if you just glance at a press release, an operating margin expansion sounds like a win.
Right, look, our margins are up.
But when your top and bottom lines are getting hit and your forward guidance is completely bleak, that tiny margin expansion tells a very different story. That tells you they're just squeezing pennies out of cost cutting.
Exactly. They aren't growing the pie. They are just aggressively shrinking the cost of baking it.
Yeah.
A 20 basis point expansion, which, by the way, is just 0.2%, that often comes from freezing hiring, cutting travel, reducing overhead, or delaying internal investments.
So it's not real growth.
No, not at all. They're temporarily burning less gas to make the car look efficient. But the pipeline of future work, the actual fuel for the business, is drying up.
Because clients are pausing.
Right. Clients are pausing their massive legacy IT migrations because they're trying to figure out their AI strategies. They don't want to sign a 5-year contract for a toll road if a teleporter might be available next year.
That makes total sense. And, when a company faces that kind of structural existential threat, the instinct is almost always to find a scapegoat.
Oh, absolutely.
This is the part of the commentary that really stuck with me, because the author calls out the absurdity of the excuses being prepped for Wall Street.
The macro excuses.
Yes. The source notes that these companies might try to blame these poor results on macroeconomic factors, specifically floating the idea of an Iran-America war as the reason for the downturn.
It is a classic misdirection play. When the internal machinery breaks down, point to a fire outside the window.
But the author insists no one is going to believe that. And they shouldn't. It feels like a high school student who fails a geometry test and tries to blame it on a thunderstorm 3 towns over.
Right?
Oh, the barometric pressure really messed up my ability to calculate the area of a triangle.
Yeah, nobody's buying that.
No. You failed because you didn't study the material. A geopolitical shock is a convenient distraction from the reality that you failed to adapt your core business to the AI revolution.
The author is arguing that the systemic lack of AI adaptation is the sole culprit for this bleak revenue guidance. You just cannot blame international conflicts for a structural failure to innovate.
Right.
If your core business model is being automated away, a conflict in the Middle East isn't your primary headwind. The Frankenstein monster is already inside the house, rearranging the furniture.
So how did the monster get inside? Or rather, why did we leave the front door wide open and refuse to buy a security system?
That is the billion-dollar question.
Well, the source actually rewinds the clock to trace this structural decay back to a specific historical root cause within the Indian IT sector. And this is where the narrative shifts from macroeconomics to the psychology of leadership.
We are looking at a fundamental clash of visions at the highest level of corporate governance.
Right. Here's where it gets really interesting. The author zeroes in on Infosys and a historic dispute between its legendary founder, Narayana Murthy, and the CEO at the time, Vishal Sikka.
Right, that was a huge moment.
Huge. And the source makes this massive sweeping claim. If Sikka had been allowed to stay and execute his vision at Infosys, India as a whole would have taken a massive step forward in artificial intelligence.
But they didn't.
Exactly. According to the author, Murthy didn't let that happen.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, to understand why this clash matters so much, we have to look at the mechanics of the innovator's dilemma in the context of IT services.
Okay, break that down for us.
So Narayana Murthy is an icon. He built an absolute empire based on the utilization metric. The Indian IT model was perfected by hiring thousands of brilliant engineers, training them and deploying them to Western companies at a massive labor arbitrage advantage.
You bill for every head.
You bill for every head every hour. The more bodies you threw at a problem, the more revenue you generated.
It was a machine calibrated for linear, highly predictable scale.
Exactly. But then Sikka comes in from Silicon Valley, and he represents a totally different paradigm. He wanted to pivot toward products, toward core intellectual property, and toward aggressive AI innovation.
And that is where the collision happens.
Right there. Because a pivot to AI and product platforms directly cannibalizes the billable hour model.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
If Sikka builds an AI tool that automates a task that used to take 50 engineers to complete, he has just destroyed the revenue stream of those 50 billable heads.
So for a founder like Murthy, who built his entire legacy on headcount and utilization, that pivot looks like sheer destruction.
Yes, it looks like you're burning down the house.
I mean, it's incredibly difficult to stand in front of your shareholders, look at a business model that is printing money today, and say, we need to burn this to the ground and endure years of lower margins so we can survive a theoretical technological shift a decade from now.
It takes a very specific kind of risk tolerance.
And the source even throws in this fascinating little detail that Murthy harbored dreams of becoming the president of India.
Which the author uses to paint a picture of where Murthy's focus was.
Right. It suggests a mindset focused on legacy, prestige, and institutional stability, rather than the messy, high-risk, bleeding edge of technological disruption.
Yeah, he wanted to protect the empire as it was.
He chose to protect the telecaller script instead of trying to build his own bank vault.
And the author is using the specific historical anecdote at Infosys as a microcosm for the entire Indian IT industry. The sector collectively chose legacy stability over aggressive innovation.
They played it safe.
They prioritized the predictable quarterly dividends over the unpredictable investment in AI R&D. And the compounding opportunity cost of that decision is exactly what is dragging down their guidance today.
Wow.
In technology, playing it safe for too long is always the most dangerous risk you can take.
Which brings us to the sheer, almost incomprehensible scale of what they missed out on by playing it safe. We are moving from the failure of specific legacy companies to a paradigm shift in how wealth and value are even generated in the modern economy.
The scale is it's hard to wrap your head around.
The author wants to illustrate the unpredictable, almost violent pace of this change, and they use a comparison that forces you to completely recalibrate your understanding of scale. They look at Bill Gates.
For decades, the absolute benchmark for ultimate unimaginable wealth.
Right, the guy who built the operating system that runs the planet. But the author points out that Bill Gates' entire lifetime wealth, everything he accumulated over decades of building Microsoft into a global monopoly, is mathematically less than the wealth generated in a single midday session rally for SpaceX.
It is a staggering metric. It defies the logic of traditional markets.
It fundamentally breaks the math we used to. Like, how does the market justify creating more wealth in a few hours of trading for a space company than it did over the entire lifespan of the PC revolution? The author argues that because of this rapid, decoupled wealth creation, we are currently living in a new Stone Age.
Let's unpack that specific metaphor, because the new Stone Age perfectly captures the alienation the author is describing.
Are we really just cavemen staring up at a spaceship right now?
Essentially, yes. Why does the market value a midday rally at SpaceX higher than decades of Microsoft's historical dominance? Because the market has stopped valuing linear growth and has started pricing in infinite scalability.
Infinite scale.
Right. SpaceX and advanced AI models represent winner-take-all monopolies that aren't bounded by human headcount or traditional logistics. They are theoretical leaps in human capability.
While the legacy IT companies are still trying to sell billable hours.
Precisely. When the author calls it a new Stone Age, they are expressing how far behind the traditional IT sector has fallen.
It's not just a product cycle late.
No, it's that they are effectively operating in a completely different technological epoch. You have companies building rockets that catch themselves and AI that can write its own software.
Yeah.
And then you have IT firms relying on human beings to manually patch legacy database software. The legacy firms are wielding stone tools while staring up at a spaceship.
The velocity of wealth creation has completely detached from the old rules of the game. If your company's valuation is based on a shrinking pile of past contracts and a headcount that is becoming obsolete, you are trapped in that Stone Age. Which brings us to the climax of this commentary. The author looks ahead, past the current Q3 earnings, past the historical missteps, and delivers a prophecy aimed straight at the investors and workers holding on to these legacy companies.
The author is deeply skeptical of the institutional narrative surrounding these firms.
Yet they outright warn us not to believe the rosy, optimistic brokerage reports that routinely get released about Indian IT companies.
We all know those reports.
Right, the ones that say, aha and oh-ho, painting a beautiful picture of steady dividends and returning demand. The source says they absolutely do not believe those reports. Because without a massive systemic pivot toward innovation, the author predicts these IT companies will, and I quote, die crying.
And to drive the finality of that death home, the author uses a very striking hyper-local metaphor.
Yes, the Kukatpalli curry points.
All right.
Now, for anyone listening who might not be familiar with the street-level geography of Hyderabad, a curry point is a ubiquitous local phenomenon. It's a tiny storefront or stall usually on a street corner, selling simple takeaway curries.
They're everywhere.
They are absolutely everywhere. They are a dime a dozen. If one closes down on a Tuesday, 3 more open up on the same block by Thursday. It is the ultimate commoditized business.
Zero barrier to entry.
Exactly. No unique intellectual property, and it's a constant race to the bottom on price.
It is a brilliant way to conceptualize the threat of pure commoditization. The author is translating this hyper-local image into a brutal economic reality for what are currently global tech giants.
They are predicting that a massive multi-billion-dollar titan of industry, a company that currently builds global infrastructure, will devolve into an easily replaceable low-tier commodity stall.
Yeah.
Just another curry point on a crowded street fighting for scraps with absolutely no leverage over its clients.
This raises an important question for you, the listener. If you are staring at your portfolio right now, or if you are building a career in traditional tech, how much trust can you actually place in those optimistic brokerage reports when the ground reality of technological disruption is screaming the exact opposite?
That's the real question.
Those reports rely on historical data. They measure the traffic that used to drive on the toll road. But, as we've discussed, AI isn't an incremental change. It's a board-flipping event.
It's the teleporter.
It is the teleporter. You have to care about this because it completely redefines where value is created and where value is permanently destroyed in the global economy.
The rules haven't just changed. The old game doesn't even exist anymore.
Yeah.
Like if you're relying on the old metrics of headcount, utilization, and legacy maintenance contracts, you were relying on a map of a city that just underwent a Category 9 earthquake.
Yeah.
The streets simply aren't where they used to be.
And the buildings that used to be the tallest are the ones most likely to have collapsed.
It's an incredibly sobering reality check from Adil Akve. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought, something to just chew on as you evaluate the tech landscape today.
Okay.
And it's a thought that builds directly on the logic the source material just laid out.
Let's hear it.
So, the author heavily criticizes traditional IT for missing the AI wave. They frame AI as this uncontrollable Frankenstein monster that is right now threatening the American tech banks that actually built it.
Right.
And they mock the Indian IT sector for being stuck in the Stone Age, miles behind the innovation curve.
That is the core thesis, yes.
But think about the mechanics of a technological revolution. If this AI monster is truly as disruptive and uncontrollable as the author claims, if it is currently turning on its American creators and aggressively cannibalizing their core business models first, could being a step behind actually be a bizarre, unexpected advantage?
Oh, that is a fascinating strategic twist.
Right. If you are stuck in the Stone Age, you aren't the one getting eaten by Frankenstein today. The bleeding edge is where you do the bleeding.
Right.
Could that delay, that stubborn lack of early innovation that Murthy insisted on, actually provide these legacy telecaller companies the time to watch the creators' fatal mistakes play out in real time? Could they sit back, watch the carnage, and learn exactly how not to deploy AI before they are forced to make their own leap?
So the telecaller essentially stays on the line and listens while the bank gets robbed by the monster it locked in its own vault.
Exactly. When the entire industry is on fire, sometimes the safest place to be is the person who is too slow to strike a match. Something to think about. Until next time, keep questioning the board.